Alrighty, everyone. Good evening. Thank you all for joining part 5 of our 6-part webinar series on physical well-being presented by Affinity Federal Credit Union. Today's topic is goal setting and habit tracking, making this a lifestyle. My name is Nicholas Battagliano. I am the Wellbeing Communication Specialist here at Affinity. Today's presenter and expert guest is Anthony Rusmano, founder of Rusmano Training LLC and personal health coach for exercise, nutrition, and lifestyle. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, and a link to watch the presentation again will all be shared with you at the end very soon. Also, if you have any questions you would like to ask during the presentation, feel free to use the Q&A option on your panel, and we will be more than happy to address them at the end of the webinar. Before we jump in, a quick disclosure. This information is for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide general guidance and does not constitute medical advice. Each person's circumstances are different and may not apply to the specific information provided. You should seek the advice of medical professionals to discuss your specific needs before making any medical, dietary, or lifestyle commitments regarding the matters related to the webinar series. Affinity is not affiliated, nor do they endorse or recommend any of the reference apps, websites, or companies and/or their products or services. Accordingly, Affinity takes no responsibility for the quality or reliability of the products or services offered by these apps, websites, or companies. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Nick. I appreciate the introduction. And welcome on in, everyone. I'm very excited to jump into part 5 today. We are coming towards the end of it. So this is going to be the last webinar that is very topic related. As you can see, part 6 is going to be an open conversation, which I'm very excited about. It's going to really recap everything that we discussed up to this point. So although no, this is not what you would think of as a health related topic today, I am going to make it very health related because obviously that's what I do. But that's what I found has worked best for me as well. So we're going to be going through, I'm going to add to this, it's going to be goal settings, habits, and routines. And what I really mean by this is just making this thing a lifestyle. Like I said, we went through nutrition, we went through movement and exercise, sleep, mental health, such important health topics, but none of these matter if we don't make this a lifestyle, right? These things shouldn't be just a goal that we set. They should be a lifestyle. So we're going to get into how we can make these a goal that we set and turn it into a lifestyle as well. So jumping into it, as always, we have 3 points that I want to make today. I want to start with how to set, stick to, and hit goals. Then I'm going to move into habits versus routines, and the difference between them. And then we again are going to close this out on how to make this thing a lifestyle. And again, that is one of the most important parts because, as I mentioned in the other webinars, the health-related webinars, we were focusing on each of those aspects of health in order to increase our health span. And that is what this is going to be, making this a lifestyle so that we can increase that health span. All right. So my goal with you today is to show you how to set goals, develop goals, habits, routines. And again, just like I said, in order to just not have all that information that we went through for the other 4 topics and just let it sit there, we really want to use this to our full potential. So jumping into number 1, how to set, stick to, and hit goals. As you guys know, goal setting is a very hot thing today. And my goal for this webinar, I really want to give you guys at least a direction, something to take away with that you can do tonight, and another way to approach your goals. Mine may not be the best one out there, but it's one that has worked for me, and maybe you can try it out and hopefully it'll work for you. So jumping into how to set, stick to, and hit goals. First off, I want to go through some of the biggest mistakes in goal setting because, as you guys know, right, the perfect example is every single January, we all have those New Year's resolutions. And unfortunately, the first thing people say when they make their New Year's resolution is, I'm actually going to stick to it this year, right? They're already telling themselves that they haven't stuck to their goals in the past. So there's got to be something wrong here. What is the biggest mistakes? Why are people setting a New Year's resolution and just not doing anything with it? And by the way, we are halfway through the year, so I hope you are still on your New Year's resolution goal. If not, totally okay. I'm going to help you today, and hopefully we can reset them. So that's what I mean by actually setting, sticking to, and hitting goals, not just making this another New Year's resolution. All right, so starting with the mistakes. The reason why I want to jump into this mistakes before we get into the actual how to is to show you what not to do, and then we'll look at what to do. All right. So some of the reasons that most people don't hit their New Year's resolutions or some of their goals. First off, is they set vague, unrealistic, and undesirable goals. What this means is vague, they don't set a specific goal. Unrealistic, either they're way too attainable or just almost impossible. And then undesirable goals, they don't even look forward to hitting them. They don't even know why they set them in the first place, maybe because they had to. Right? So that's the first one. Second, setting too many goals. All right, so we'll jump in this, but very straightforward. Don't overcomplicate things. Don't over flood your head with so many different avenues and things that you want to do. Three, setting goals without a plan or a process, right? This is exactly why people fail a New Year's resolution because they do not have a plan or process, right? We say we want to achieve something and then we just let it flow in the air. So not having a plan or process when you set that goal. Setting goals without adjusting them. This is another big thing. Again, we're halfway through the year. If you have not looked at your New Year's resolutions up to this point, again, that is okay because we're going to go through how to stick to, and hit goals. And again, you are allowed to adjust them. You should adjust them over time because you change over time and hopefully in a positive direction. All right. Another not to do is setting a goal without identifying the obstacles. When you have a goal and you have a goal that is a very high achieving goal that you're going to really have to work hard for, it is not going to be a smooth and straight path towards that. There are going to be obstacles. There are going to be things in the way. Let's jump ahead of those and identify those obstacles before we even get to them. So that's another one. Setting goals with peers is an actually interesting one, right? And I want to expand on this. It's great to have goals with peers in the sense that you're sharing your goals with them, right? Using them as accountability. But for you and your peer to have the same goal, it's just unreasonable, it's unrealistic, undesirable, unless it's very broad. So I would say use peers as an accountability rather than setting a goal with a peer. Um, and then we have setting negative goals. All right, so setting negative goals is a negative attitude towards whatever you are setting, right? So, for example, stop spending too much money may be a goal. Well, why don't we change it to more of a positive goal where we say create a budget to save and spend money appropriately. Going to more my what I know best in terms of health related stuff. Everyone may have a goal of, okay, I want to stop eating unhealthy. Let's change that around. Let's eat more nutritious foods, right? So just bringing more positivity to the actual goal. And then only focusing on the outcome, right? Again, another New Year's resolution thing where we set the goal and we let it float in the air and we are only focused on that specific outcome, right? We're not focused on the process. We're not focused on what we got to do to get there. We just are focused on that end goal. So perfect example again is if you have a New Year's resolution that you wanted to lose a certain amount of weight, right? Well, most people just focus on getting to that number on the scale without focusing on the little habits, the nutrition, the exercise, the sleep, you name it, all the webinars that we just went through. So these are all the biggest mistakes that I've seen that I've also have done with goal setting. So now taking these, knowing what not to do, I've come up with a three-step process for me personally that has worked really well for me that I think is a great way and method to set goals. All right, so I try to make this as simple as possible. So again, like I said, you will be able to get this information in a template or a worksheet, I'll call it, at the end of the webinar. I'll have the link to it. So you do not have to take pictures of these templates. I will have a full Google Sheets for you at the end that you can download. So I just want to mention that ahead of time. So I'm going to move through these a little quickly because they're all in that template that you can download, but I want to give you an idea of how this works. So here are my 3 steps to goal setting and what has really worked well for me. So step number 1, write up to 12 annual goals using the Smarter Goals templates. Now, I know a lot of you have heard of the SMART Goals template. This is just another one called Smarter Goals. It's actually from the planner that I use called the Full Focus Planner. And I just like it because they add a little extra, a couple of extra words to it. So set 12 annual goals. And I know I said 12, but that does not mean 12, right? It's up to 12. Like I mentioned, and one of the biggest mistakes to goal setting is setting too many goals. So it does not have to be 12. If it's two, great. If it's three, awesome. You just want to set the amount of goals that is necessary for where you're at and what you want to do. All right, so set a realistic number for yourself. And then most importantly, make sure that you are very specific when you are setting your goal, right? Your goal should just not be, I want to lose weight. It should be, when do you want to lose weight, right? Make it very specific, make it measurable, give it a time to it, make it exciting, make it relevant to where you are. Follow that template and just add a little bit more thought and extra detail into each goal statement. All right, so I'll run through my example as we go along. One of my goals will be read 12 books this year, starting on January 1st. So I have the exact amount of books that I want to read. I have the date to it. It's exciting for me, so on and so forth. All right, so set up to 12 annual goals using the Smarter Goals template. Step number two, write down the importance of the goal and set a reward for each annual goal. So we have a little A and B to this step number two, right? So A, we're going to set an importance to it, and B, we're going to set a reward to it. So following the template along, going straight across, first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to rewrite the smarter goal that we set for ourselves. Why are we going to rewrite it? Just because writing down is going to really put it into our heads, put it into our brains. All right, then once you rewrite that down, for each and every goal you set, you're going to set A, why this goal is important, right? So for me, in this example, like I said, I wanted to read 12 books this year starting on January 1st. Why do I want to read it? Why is it important to me? To educate myself in a variety of topics and get off my phone slash social media more. Okay, so you notice how my goal isn't just because I want to get smarter or because I want to read more, right? Be very specific. You have to set a very valuable importance to this if you want this to truly work. So I was very specific. One of my extra goals is to get off my phone and social media more. So reading is going to help me do that, a very specific reason. All right. And then how will you celebrate once you achieve your goal? For each goal, set a reward. That's gonna be one of the biggest things is having something to look forward to when you achieve this goal. And you should, especially if the goal is something that it's gonna obtain a lot of hours, a lot of work. We should reward ourselves when we achieve it. So for me, this is just an example, purchase a gift for myself worth up to $100. All right, that can be anything. I just threw that out there as an example. Don't overdo the reward, but also don't underdo yourself. But setting a reward is very, very important for this process to work. All right, so number two is write down the importance and set a reward for each annual goal. And then number three, break down each annual goal into quarterly goals. All right, so now that we have the foundation of our goals set, right, we have what they actually are in a very detailed description. We have the importance, right, the why behind it. We have a reward for it. We have the core of our goal, of each of our goals. Now we can actually figure out how to hit them. All right, and that brings us to step number three. So when we break down our goals into quarterly goals, what we are essentially doing is making a process goal, right? We have our overarching goal that we want for the year, and then each quarter goal is going to be our process goal, meaning how are we going to get there, right? So I personally love going quarterly. You could go monthly, but for me, quarterly is just honestly less tedious, and I just like resetting it every single quarter. So either way, just breaking your annual goal down is the most important step to this. Okay, so again, going off my example, right? My example was that I wanted to read 12 books this year starting on January 1st, set an importance, set a goal or a reward to it, and then I broke it down. So my quarter one goal is I want to read 3 books this quarter. All right, the books that I want to read are Atomic Habits, Can't Hurt Me, Outliers. I just threw 3 out there, but this is going to be a perfect example. Again, this template is going to be, I'm going to have a link for you that you can download at the end of this webinar. But what you can do after is you can track your results, right? You can put what actually happened during that quarter. And then what you can do too is then once you say the actual result, you set quarter two, then three, then four. All right, so that is my 3-step process to setting goals. Really taking a very and it's going to take some time. So you make sure you set some time to stick to it, or to set some time to actually think about it. But setting the goal, having the importance down, setting the reward, and then breaking it down into a process goal. This is truly how I've been able to set, stick to, and achieve goals. However, it doesn't just end here. So we're going to keep breaking this down a little bit further. This leads us into our next topic, habits versus routines. So we're going to take a break, keep all that goal setting stuff on the back burner. We are going to come back to it. But first, I really want to differentiate between habits and routines, and then I'll show you how this works really well with this whole goal setting template. All right. So first off, habit. I know these are very, very general terms that we may think we know, but when you really think about it and take a step back, it's actually interesting to see how different they are, right? So for a habit, this is a behavior that we don't really think about. It may even take no thought, but it's just kind of done through consistent repetition, right? So this could be reading, exercise, drinking water, brushing our teeth, right? And a perfect example is called the habit loop. If anyone has ever heard of this, it's pretty well known, but what the habit loop is a very, very consistent loop where we have a trigger that causes a behavior that causes a reward, right? So a trigger, for example, in this picture is that we're tired. So what do? Grab caffeine. That's the behavior. And then we get a reward because we get a little bit of energy, right? Nothing that you really thought out, just something from emotions to behavior and then to a reward that was just kind of naturally that naturally happen. All right. So that is what a habit is. It is a behavior with little or no thought formed through consistent repetition. A routine, on the other hand, is a series of behaviors that are intentionally repeated frequently, right? So a routine is more of a structure for stability, and it's also going to really help with streamlining decision making. But you can think about it this way, where habits are part of a routine, right? So, for example, I have a nightly routine. My nightly routine consists of many of my habits. For example, first thing I do is I may take my supplements. I may take a shower. I'm going to remove my phone and plug it in so I don't go on it. And then I'm going to read, right? These are a routine that is filled with a bunch of my habits. Because I don't think about those things, I just go in that nice structured flow because it's a routine of mine. All right. So, with that being said, both of these work very well together, right? They work hand in hand. So, think about it this way. The reason that these arrows are going in both directions is because routines become habits and habits build routines, right? Just like I said in my example, you have one with the other, right? And habits go really well into the routines as well. So they are interchangeable, but they're also connected. And you also I'll jump into this actually in the next part. But the reason I focus on these routines and habits being interchangeable is because this is how I actually approach my health coaching. This is essentially what I love my saying to be is small changes, big results. This is so important and especially when we're talking about habits and routines that are going to go into the big picture. But again, for example, for me as a health coach, if we're only focusing on exercise and movement, right? We can make that a very specific habit in your lifestyle. And then once that habit is formed and it's consistent, well, then it's going to be part of your daily routine. It's not going to be something that you have to force yourself to do because it's now a routine of your day to day. Same with nutrition, same with sleep, same with all of these little things that we can do. But it's the small changes that lead to the big results, right? It's the small habits that lead to the routines. That's how I really want you to think about it, right? And this interchange between routines and habits, this is what really increases long-term adherence, right? This is where we get the lifestyle side of it. All right, so what I really want to do now is connect the routines, the habits with the goal setting to really bring this together for you. All right, so we set our goals in the beginning. We know how to do that. We now know how habits and routines are interconnected and they really increase long-term compliance because we're going to have small little changes, small little habits that are going to become more long-term routines. All right, so why don't we create habits and routines that are specific to our annual goals in order to improve our long-term compliance for that goal? Right? We just said that habits and routines are awesome for increasing long-term compliance. Well, if we relate that to our our annual goal, well, then we can improve our long-term compliance with that goal. And this is exactly where the sticking to part of our goals will work really well. So I'm going to break this down to make this very simple for you. All right. So again, we have our goals, we have our annual goals, and we broke them down into those quarterly process goals. Then we also had the habits and routines that are interchangeable that work well together. And therefore, we're going to have this nice streamline of a way to bring our goals all the way down into our routines and habits. Okay. So I have a great example. Going back to the example that I was using, going one by one, we have our annual goal of reading 12 books this year. We have our quarterly goals of reading about three a quarter. All right. So in order to bring this into routines and habits, well, maybe I make it a habit to read 10 pages per night so that it becomes part of my routine. And then what will happen is because I'm reading 10 pages a night, because it's a routine, well, now I'm also benefiting my long-term goal, my annual goal of reading the 12 books. This is how I figured out how to really break down my annual goals, my long-term goals into daily habits. And when I figured that out, it was eye-opening to me because now what we are doing is instead of setting a New Year's resolution and forgetting about it, now we're setting a New Year's resolution that we are making an impact on every single day without even realizing it. Right? We're reading 10 pages a day without realizing that it's going to help us get to our 12 books this year. So that is truly how goals, routines, and habits are interconnected. Like I said, I have a whole worksheet for you guys at the end of this webinar that you're going to be able to download. That'll make a lot of sense. It's going to run you through everything, but it's going to help you take those annual goals into daily habits. All right. So now that we have that covered, I want to jump into how to make this thing a lifestyle. Okay. So one of the biggest things, and again, I know there was a lot of information that we went through with nutrition, with movement, exercise, sleep, mental health. There was a lot there. All right. So you can't just take all of that at once and run with it. You truly have to make little changes, add them into your life, and then start seeing the big results later down the road. However, there is a big misconception about living a healthy lifestyle, and I want to go through those right now. So, making this a lifestyle, what does a healthy lifestyle look like? Well, what does it not look like? This is going to be the most important part. This does not mean if you're living a healthy lifestyle that you have to follow a strict diet. You don't have to do keto. You don't have to do low carb. You don't have to do carnivore. That's not what this means. All right. What this also does not mean is that you can never have unhealthy foods again. This also does not mean that you have to exercise for hours on hours and on hours a day. This does not mean that you have to get rid of your social life. All right. Making this a lifestyle, living a healthy lifestyle can incorporate these things. And I'm only speaking of this from experience. So, how can we do this? How can we live this healthy lifestyle, incorporating all of the four previous webinars that we just talked about? One of my favorite rules that is rules are in any industry, but also rules for health is called the 80-20 rule. And I love this rule because it has personally made the most impact for me and why I've been consistent with my own health journey for about I think over 3 years now, which is unbelievable. This rule specifically, and I'm going to really break it down too. So, the 80-20 rule, just like as it sounds, right? 80% of the time, you're going to make the healthy decision, right? 80% of your week, 80% of your month, 80% of your year. I want you to make the right food choices, work out when you don't want to, sleep the right amount, right? Sleep appropriately to what your goals are, read, write, do the healthy lifestyle things that make you feel good that you know you should be doing, right? That's 80%. 20% of the time, you can be a little bit more flexible, right? Eat some foods that you enjoy. Maybe you're going to walk instead of work out, right? Movement instead of exercise. Uh, be a little bit more social and stay up later. This is the 20%. The reason I love this rule is for a couple things. One, because over time, you will progress the meaning of your 80% and your 20%. What I mean by this is your 80% is going to improve. You're going to start getting all of the benefits of you're going to start getting all the benefits of the healthy lifestyle. And what happens is the results are so addicting that you're going to start feeling great, you're going to be looking great, you're going to be more energized, happier, confident, you name it. You're not going to want to go back to your old self because of how good you feel and the benefits that you got, right? So that 80% is now going to maybe go to 81%, right? Maybe it's going to go to 82%. But what happens is when you bring that 80 to 81%, we're going from 20 to 19. So therefore, we are naturally, as we get more results, making these small little changes to more and more of a healthier lifestyle, right? And at the same time, not only is the percentage going to shift as well, but the content within each of the 80% and within the 20% are going to change, right? So for example, I'm 3 years into this. My 20%, my unhealthy days are very, very different from someone else, right? Your 20% may be very, very different from someone else. So that's a perfect example where whether it's we're talking about the healthy lifestyle or the unhealthy lifestyle, they're going to change over time as you get more and more results. So instead of pizza, maybe you're still having the typical foods you would have on a healthy diet, you're just having more of it, right? So that's a good example. So that's what I love about this rule is because we are not locked into the 80%, 20%, but what it does is it starts getting you the benefits of the healthy lifestyle. You're going to itch for more, and then you're going to start really leaning towards that 80% and elevating it there. So that is my personal recommendation in terms of how to make this thing a lifestyle. Be realistic with yourself. Don't try to restrict everything because if you restrict everything, you're not going to do anything. And really just try to be realistic with this whole lifestyle. All right. So I want to leave you with some things to think about in terms of goal setting, habits, routines, and making this thing a lifestyle. One of my absolute favorite things is actually from the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, and it is the rule of 1%. And what he says is to get 1% better every single day, and that's it. 1% better, right? To us, sounds like nothing. It sounds like that is no improvement. But 1% over a year means that we're getting 37.8% better within that year. I will take a 30% improvement in myself year to year. That would be unbelievable. And all that takes is getting 1% better. To me, what does that 1% better mean? All it means is doing better than what you did yesterday, having a better week than what you had the week before, right? Making these, again, small changes that are going to add up over time into big results. And I have many, many, many examples with this with my clients. And I just have found this to work very, very well. Small changes lead to big results. Next one is by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. I absolutely love this quote by Ben Franklin. Very simply, right? You have to take time to make time. In the health related field, you have to meal prep in order to have a healthy lunch, right? You have to set your clothes out and bring them to work in order to get your workout in at work, right? These are the things you have to prepare yourself. And if you don't prepare, you're preparing to fail. So that's another one of my favorite ones. And finally, health is not about the weight you lose, but about the life you gain, right? And obviously, this says specifically about the weight you lose. That can go into many, many, many things. I really want you to focus on the end of this. Health is about the life you gain. And that is everything that I'm trying to preach here. It's about the life you gain because this is a lifestyle, needs to be a lifestyle. So, with that being said, that added to our very last, but definitely not least, health span toolkit and sums them all up: nutrition, movement, exercise, sleep, mental health, goal setting, and routines and habits. So, like I said, here are a bunch of resources for you. However, I do have that free goal setting worksheet that is in this QR code. You'll see it. It'll take you to my link page. and it'll be at the top. Actually, named it Affinity Goal Setting Worksheet. Feel free to download it. Ask me any questions that you have. Again, this is the exact worksheet that I personally use and the one that I actually just laid out for you guys that goes from annual goals all the way down to habits. So again, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out, and we will open up for Q&A as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. Looks like we already have some questions in here. Do you have any tips for when you're super tired to keep going with your habits?
Yes. So it depends on the habit, of course, and kind of depends on where you're at. But this is where the realistic side comes to it, right? If you're in a good spot with your habit and you've been super consistent with it and you're confident with it, it's okay to skip a night. You're gonna skip a night. I am not perfect with my habits. There are plenty of nights where I maybe I don't want to write down my planner, but I'll do it in the morning. But again, going back to the 80-20 rule, as long as that 80% of the time you are doing it, you're gonna see results. So what I would see is try to incorporate that tired day into that 20%. That way you're still sticking to that 80-20 rule, even from a habit setting as well.
Awesome. Please, everyone, throw your questions into the Q&A option and we could read them out. Right. Can you overdo the 20% with eating?
Love this. Reality is yes, you can. You totally can. If you are one that is susceptible to completely going off what is actually referred to as binge eating, then you totally can get rid of a week's worth and 80% worth of hard work just in that 20%. So you really want to be realistic with it. If you're one of those types of people that know that if you give yourself that 20%, that is not going to go the way you want it, try cutting it down to 10%, right? Or making it fit with your lifestyle so that you're not really overdoing it. But I would say is if you are one to really have those bad habits of just completely going off in that 20%, I would really try to think about that in terms of cutting down maybe the 20% or just trying to think about how really that fits in your lifestyle, maybe incorporating some other habits and routines to combat that.
When life begins lifing, routines can get derailed. How do
Hmm.
you get back on track?
Love it. Routines will guaranteed get derailed. Habits will get derailed. Goals will get derailed. One of the best things that you can do is just restart, right? Readjust and restart is my favorite go-to. Like I said, I mentioned how one of the biggest mistakes to goal setting is not changing them, not adjusting them. The second you fall off, first off, understand it's okay. We're human. But then what I want you to try to do is readjust the goal, maybe rewrite all of the importance to it, rewrite the reward to it, readjust the goal, reset the process goal, create new habits, create new teams, just do a complete reset. Because it's okay. If you feel like you didn't completely fall off, then I would just start back right away on the same goal. But if you feel like it's been a week or a month or something like that, I would just do a complete reset.
Is there such thing as overexercising?
Hmm. Totally. Absolutely. There is a term called overtraining, which is the same exact thing as overexercising. And basically to keep it simple, because this could go many ways, when you overexercise, a couple of things that happen. One, your muscles are completely breaking down and they're not able to build and rebuild properly. Reason being is because you're not giving yourself enough rest time. So on top of the fact that you're working really hard in the exercise, you're also not allowing your muscles to rest, and a resting muscle is a muscle that can rebuild. At the same time, you are burning a lot of calories, and calories are a unit of energy. And therefore, if you are over burning calories from over exercising, well, then therefore you're going to be significantly under energy, right? So that's why fatigue, is very, very common for people who are losing weight because they are in a calorie deficit, meaning an energy deficit. Throw on top of over exercising, then you are doing that as well. So I would best advice for that is listen to your body. If you are tired, then take a rest day. It's not going to be the end of the world. And just truly just be in tune with the way you feel.
Do you ever change your goals mid-quarter?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because and I love this question because it does depend. You do want to be careful. You want to have a good reason to change your goal, right? You don't want to just change your goal because you may not hit them. Now, if you realize that the goal that you did set was unrealistic, well, then yes, you can change it, but still make sure it's a challenging goal. However, but yeah, for example, I'll use myself as a perfect example, going off the one that we used for the 12 book one. In the month of May was actually in Europe, so I did not read as much as I wanted to. So I had to change my reading goal. I could not get 3 books in this quarter. I only got 2 in, so now I got to read 4 next quarter. So that's a perfect example of how I changed my quarter goal.
Already. I'm curious as to how you can recover from a major disruption, something like moving house or starting grad school, and having to sleep, exercise, food prep, schedule disrupted. How to build back into a healthful routine when you're already stretched by your circumstances.
Hmm. Yeah, so this could definitely be a long answer to your question, but I'll keep it simple. I think one of the best things, because it kind of goes off the other question with falling off goals. I think one of the best things about falling off or just getting started that people really don't utilize enough is starting small. We always have this idea that it starts on Monday or we have to drop everything to start something new, start something healthy or beneficial to our lives. It doesn't have to be this crazy change every single time. If you had a crazy life event that happened or you just fell off your goals, it's okay to just add one little habit. It doesn't have to be I'm starting tomorrow or it can be okay, I'm just gonna start with one meal. I think one of the biggest recommendations that I have going off that is just to start small. We're in no rush, right? Our goals, our habits, our routines, this lifestyle, it's not going to go away as long as we don't push it away. So keep it simple, add one little thing at a time that's going to evolve over time, but then that way you're not stressing yourself out. As we know, I'm a big proponent on reducing stress. And that would be the number one thing is that if you try to do too much at once, it's a recipe for stress and it's a recipe for not making this a lifestyle.
I'm struggling with the bad habit of eating too fast. Any advice on how I can manage this?
Yes. So this would be these are great questions for the open discussion. So I love we're getting a head start. So my recommendations if you're eating too fast would be first and foremost, it depends on what you're eating, right? If you're and my answer to this is going to be if you're eating a nutrient dense plate, which consists of a protein, healthy carbohydrate, healthy veggies, and a healthy fat as well. Well, what I would recommend if you're really struggling is there is an order that you can eat that'll help satiate you. I would start with eating all the protein, then eating all the healthy fats. Healthy protein and healthy fats together are very satiating, so they're going to make you feel full. And then finish with the veggies and then the carbs. Um, this way, what's going to happen is because the protein and fats are more satiating, they're going to make you feel more full. Well, then that way, it's going to slow you down because you can only digest so much in that matter of time. That's one way. Another way is maybe watching a show or eating with someone, like having something that could distract you. Overall, I would say if you're not eating at a crazy speed, it's going to be okay. But I'll think about those things.
It is said that it takes 21 days to build a new habit, but how do you build a new habit after years of having a good routine that was derailed by change in environment?
Hmm. Yeah, so I've seen that 21 days thing before. I can't say I agree nor disagree. I think it's person to person, and it also depends on the habit that you're trying to build. For example. you can build a very simple habit within a week, but some of the other ones are tougher. But so I would say is again, it's tough because it really depends on the situation. But if you're really if you have that change in environment, and by the way, a change in environment is the number one habit and routine disruptor of all time. So I totally get it. What I would do is going back to the other recommendation is starting small again, maybe doing a reset of just adding in new habits or the similar habits that you can do in that new environment. All right. And then let time tell. Let that one habit lead into the next, right? And then once you have maybe 3 or 4 habits, well, then you're going to naturally develop a new routine. So now that you'll have a new routine in that new environment on top of the routine that you already have at home. Now, this is tough. If you're in a hotel and that hotel is changing, well, that's going to be tough because your environment is still technically changing. So I would really think about what your schedule looks like, what your changing environment looks like, and what habits that you can stick to through that, right? And again, you reading a book is an easy example, but reading a book is a habit that you can definitely stick to environment. Might be a little bit harder, might take a little bit more discipline, but something that you can totally incorporate. So I would try to pick the habits that are most reasonable and most attainable for you in that moment, and then kind of build from there.
Other than rewards, what else can you do to keep from being discouraged?
Hmm. Love this. So yes, I would say I'm going to change this around a little bit because I think this comes down to just a motivation slash discipline type of conversation. Because if you have rewards, that should be a good motivator. However, look, at the end of the day, we also have to be realistic in the sense that when we're setting goals, habits, and routines, we're not going to be motivated all the time to do them. It is really hard, right? There are going to be plenty of times, like the other question was, that you're going to be tired and you don't want to do it, right? So I think a key answer to this question is recognizing the difference between motivation and discipline, understanding that we're not always going to be motivated. Habits, routines, and goals are going to be very easy when we are motivated, but when that motivation goes, and it will go, it's inevitable. It's one of the biggest roadblocks and speed bumps to goal setting. Recognize when that motivation goes and just turn on discipline in that moment because it's only a matter of time. It's a short period of time till your motivation comes back up. So if you can just really rely on discipline in that period of time, get you through the low of motivation because you know on the other side that motivation will come right back up, that would be my biggest recommendation. Other than that, I don't have any other ideas in terms of like stuff that you can incorporate into the actual goals. I just personally have found rewards were the best. You can do rewards throughout like the process goals as well. Maybe you want to have a reward for each process goal. That's a strategy as well. But yeah, I'm very big on the motivation versus discipline.
For people who are motivated socially, is it wise to try to recruit a friend or spouse into sharing and executing on similar goals?
Yes. So this goes back to, and I'm glad you asked this because then I can clarify on one of the biggest mistakes to goal setting was I mentioned setting goal with a peer, but I think you nailed it correctly. I think what you want to do is set a similar goal with a peer, a similar goal though, not the same goal. You both can have a very detailed goal that is similar, right? Similar in the sense that maybe you have a running partner or a workout partner, and you guys both have a number of workouts that you want to do per week, right? Well, it's going to be a different number, it's going to be different importance, it's going to be a different reward, but it's very similar that you guys can keep each other accountable. So that's the best way to work with goals and peers is to set similar goals, but make sure you detail out your own goal to yourself, then using them as accountability. This is the best part about setting a goal and sharing it with a peer is because they are going to be a form of accountability. I say this a lot with all my clients. One of the biggest values I bring as a health coach is accountability, right? I'm there for them as a resource. They know when they go through a big dip or they fall off the wagon that I'm not going to be there on the other side ridiculing them. I'm going to be there saying, hey, that's totally okay. Let's get back on our feet and keep it going. Right. So that pure accountability is so important. Someone to share your wins with, but then also someone to share your lows with, because again, motivation doesn't last forever. It's gonna go down. So that's my answer. I think I'm glad I was able to clarify that, because I think peers are very important in goal setting and habits and routines. It's just making sure you do it the right way.
Could you explain reset with an example?
Goal resetting. Yes. Okay. So, I mean, I guess I could just go off that book one. So I'll use myself an example again. So I mentioned that I went on a Europe trip in the beginning of May, and a lot of my habits and routines got derailed. So I actually did. It wasn't just reading that I had to reset on. It was a couple of them. So what I quite literally did is in the template that if you scan the QR code, you'll see. But I quite literally rewrote all of my goals that I fell off on. So I rewrote my annual goal that even if it was the same, I just rewrote it to reset, right? Then I rewrote the importance. Some of them changed, some of them didn't. And then I reset the quarterly goals, right? I changed them around. I set new ones. I set new process goals. And then it changed around my habits, right? So when I mean reset, I quite literally mean taking a step back, going back into your worksheet. And this is the importance of writing these things down and breaking them down and doing a full reset. It doesn't mean a full reset on your annual goals. It just means a full reset on the goals, habits, and routines that you fell off of in that moment. That is what I've done in terms of a reset. But obviously, there's many ways to do a reset.
Awesome. Well, that looks like it's all the questions for now. So I just want to thank everyone for joining today. Thank you, Anthony, for sharing all the amazing information. We'll be sending out a follow-up email with all the recordings for each of the webinars we've done already. So you'll receive that tomorrow. Ahead of our final webinar, open conversation, answering questions, discussing other topics, and more. In 2 weeks' time from now, we'll be wanting to get some questions from you guys. So please feel free to submit those beforehand. You guys can email me at nicholasm@affinityfcu.com. Again, that's nicholasm@affinityfcu.com. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, everyone.